Hi guys, welcome to another of our monthly-ish Cool Tools videos where we show you some of the tools that we use at the Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal shops. None of the manufacturers that we're going to talk about paid to get in this video, but we do have some sponsors who support all the free content we generate at Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal, so please visit their websites and have a look around. Today we're going to talk about a saw blade that just might be the best we've ever used. We'll show you a palm router setup that has become my go-to router these days. We'll check out some awesome measuring tools that you wonder how you ever got by without. In our dirt cheap tool of the month, we'll shed some light on your sharpening tasks. There's links in the notes below this video that will help you to skip ahead if you want to see one of these tools right away. And there's also some web links where you can find the tools on Amazon.com and read some independent reviews to help you decide if they're right for you. If you do use one of those links, it helps us out as well. So thanks in advance. Now let's get started. A while back we did a video that compared a bunch of premium saw blades from Freud, the SawStop titanium blades, and Amana. The Amana blades won that test, and they've been my blade of choice ever since. But at the woodworking show in Atlanta this year, I met John from Ridge Carbide, and he convinced me to give his blades a try. So I did some research, and I found loads of pros who say that the Ridge Carbide blades are maybe the best kept secret in woodworking. There were a couple articles I found. Fine Woodworking magazine compared them to 30 other blades, and American Woodworker magazine compared them to 18. And not a single blade in either of those tests surpassed the Ridge Carbide in overall score, including the more well-known Forest Woodworker too. And even master woodworker Frank Klaus called the Ridge Carbide TS2000 the best saw blade on the market. So naturally, I had to try it. So I put it to the test against the Amana blade that won the 40-tooth test we did a while back. The test results speak for themselves. The Ridge Carbide TS2000 beat out the Amana PR1040. The Ridge Carbide blade is significantly more expensive at $105 compared to the $62 for the Amana, but they aren't even in the same class. The Ridge Carbide is really a blade meant to last almost forever. It's got tons of carbide on the teeth, so it can be sharpened many, many times. I would put the Ridge Carbide in the same class as the Forest Woodworker too. Is it better than Forest? Well, it's a matter of opinion. Remember, Frank Klaus said it's the best blade on the market. There seems to be a lot of opinions among professional woodworkers. The consensus seems to be that both the Ridge Carbide and the Forest Woodworker 2 produce the same nice, clean cuts. But the full kerf version of the Ridge Carbide is about $45 to $50 less expensive than the comparable Forest. So the next time you shop for a premium blade, you might want to consider the Ridge Carbide. I'll put links in the notes below this video for all the blades I talked about so that you can check them out for yourself. I like palm-sized routers because you get a lot of power in a small package. We have 4 of them in our 2 workshops. We have a Porter Cable, a DeWalt, a Harbor Freight, and a Bosch. All of them will spin a bit, some easier than others because of the various features, but my favorite is the Bosch Colt, mostly because of the accessories available for it. In fact, I put together what I think is the ultimate palm router setup, which has made this router the one that I reach for the most these days. Because I'm going to show you several products from one manufacturer, I need to stress that Bosch is not a sponsor. I've never spoken to them. I have no relationship with them whatsoever. Now let me show you what my setup is. I have the Colt router inside a plunge base with their deluxe edge guide and the dust collection accessories. I also have a secondary tilting base. Let's have a closer look at each of these pieces individually. The Colt router has loads of power in a small package. It peaks at 1 horsepower, more than enough to work with just about any 1/4-inch shank bit out there. You can profile edges, cut dados, rabbets, pretty much anything you do with a full-size router and a 1/4-inch bit. But the compact size gives you the advantage of greater precision and control, in my opinion. I prefer this, especially if I'm working freehand, without an edge guide or a fence. It's not top heavy, so it's easier for me to balance on the edge of a workpiece if I'm cutting a mortise. Maybe it's just my personal taste, but I feel more comfortable with this than a full-size router in many situations. I also like that it has a soft start feature, which keeps it from taking off on me, potentially spoiling a cut when I turn it on. It also has what they call constant response circuitry, which monitors the bit's speed and kicks in more power as it gets a little bit bogged down. It keeps your bit spinning at a consistent speed all the time. I like the way the body is molded to my hand for a better grip. The base adjustments are pretty simple and a lot easier to fine-tune than some of the others, but I never used the stock base. Instead, I added the plunge base accessory. This is what really changed the way I look at palm routers. It gives me many of the features of a full-size tool while maintaining the lightweight and small, easy to control size. It's all metal, the action's very smooth, but I do have one complaint. To plunge down, you have to hold the lever down. If you let go, it snaps back and it locks the position of the router. This can be helpful in some instances, but it was hard for me to get used to since every other plunge router I own has a lever that stays unlocked once you move it. I like the depth gauge. It's well made. The cursor is a little difficult to read unless you get at eye level to it because there's nearly a 1/4 inch gap between it and the scale, but I never rely upon that scale anyway. There's a micro adjuster on the end and the usual multi-step knob for taking incremental cuts up to your full plunge depth. While I find palm routers to be more stable because they aren't as top-heavy as the full-size routers, I do sometimes miss the wider base that comes with the full-size ones. This solves that problem, giving me what amounts to the best of both worlds. They also make a dust collection accessory for the plunge base, which works well enough, but I'm a little afraid of it breaking. It's pretty bendy in the up direction. Fortunately, the pull of the hose is almost always in the down direction, but I'm still a little nervous about it. Not nervous enough that I regret spending that few extra bucks to buy the little dust collection doodad because I hate the dust a router makes without it. Another nice thing about the plunge base is it accepts a full-size edge guide. And so I bought one of the best on the market, in my opinion, the Bosch Deluxe Router Edge Guide. And I like it because it's well made and has a handy micro-adjust feature not found on most stock edge guides. I can set my bit close to a line, such as when I'm routing a groove, and then use the micro adjuster to dial in the location. I can also use the scale on the adjuster if I want to move the bit a specific distance, say a 1/64 of an inch, to just widen the groove with the second pass. I also like that the fence plates are adjustable. If I open them up, I can follow the edge of a curved workpiece just as if it were a straight one. The Deluxe Edge Guide also comes with an included circle cutting accessory that looks like a suction cup, but it's meant to give you something to tape down so you can route circles and arcs without boring a pilot hole in the center of your workpiece, as many other jigs require. And there's a dust collection accessory for working on edge profiles, which I use instead of that upper dust collection in those cases. Another nice thing about the Edge Guide is that you can use it on other routers too. The 3/8 inch rods can be set to 2 positions for router bases with holes that are 2 1/4 apart or 3 7/8 apart. So it can be a useful accessory even if you don't have a Bosch router. Together, the Bosch Colt, Plunge Base, and Deluxe Edge Guide make the ultimate routing setup. But other brands, such as DeWalt, also make plunge bases and edge guides. So why did I go with the Bosch version? Because Bosch makes another accessory that no one else does. That's this little tilting router base. You can do a lot of cool things with the tilting base, as Izzy Swan showed a while back. We'll explore this more in a future video. So that was the tipping point for me when it came to choosing between a DeWalt and a Bosch plunge router setup. The Bosch was the only one with the tilting accessory. I'll put links to all these accessories in the notes below this video so you can check out some of the other independent reviews. I'll also link to the DeWalt plunge base in case you have that one and you want to check out their plunge option. Woodworking and metalworking have a lot in common. We use many of the same tools, for example, such as drill presses and lathes, and a metalworker's mill is little more than a very precise router. But there's one tool in particular that's been a favorite of metalworkers for generations, and we woodworkers would do well to adopt it. It's the 1-2-3 block. These little blocks of steel are precisely machined to 1 inch thick, 2 inches wide, and 3 inches long. They come in solid and Swiss cheese styles, and once you start using them, you'll wonder how you got along without them for so long. Think of it as a big setup block. I've been using the small brass setup blocks for years, and adding a set of 2 1-2-3 blocks greatly expanded my capabilities. At the table saw, they really come in handy. I lay a 1-2-3 block against the edge of my blade's teeth, and I can precisely set the fence to 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, and with the addition of the fractional brass blocks, I can get virtually any measurement in between. I can use them to set the blade's height in the same way. And since they're perfectly square, I can also check that the blade is perpendicular to the table. I can use one of the blocks to recalibrate the cursor on my table saw fence because I know exactly how wide it is. I can even use it as a reference block for making repeated cuts, merely adding 3 inches to my desired measurement, setting the fence, and safely making the cuts with room for the pieces to pile up next to the blade without one kicking back at me. Many of these same techniques can be carried over to the router table, particularly bit height adjustments and fence setup. And don't forget that they work well in tandem with those brass setup bars for finer measurements. At the drill press table, they can be used to set boring depth, check that the spindle is running true. One of the holes can be used to protect your table from a bit passing through a workpiece, and that just scratches the surface. Because some styles have tapped holes in them, you can easily attach them to jigs, attach them to each other in various configurations. I use them for all sorts of creative purposes. And don't forget that they're as precise as a machinist square, which makes them even more useful in your woodworking projects. I like to keep a set of 2 with holes in them, along with a set of brass setup keys on hand, but I also like to have another 1, 2, 3 block that doesn't have any holes in it. In fact, this one is a solid piece of machined steel. I like the solid one for very specific uses because of its extra weight. This thing weighs almost 2 pounds. But this one is different from the other ones in another way as well. It comes in a set with a special magnetic dial indicator from a company called micro-gage. This is what I reach for when I need absolute precision. They call it their 1, 2, 3 micro-gauge. And the block itself is machined true to 2/10,000th of an inch, far beyond the inexpensive 1, 2, 3 blocks that I've been using up until recently. And when you add their magnetic dial indicator, which attaches to an edge, it adds a level of precision to your tool setups that is beyond anything I've used before. When I used high-speed steel joiner knives, I could use this to set them precisely. But even now with the helical cutter heads, I can use it to be sure that the outfeed table is the same level as my cutter head itself. It can be set alongside a table saw blade for ultra-precise height adjustments to the finest increment. Where it really comes in handy is with router bit setups. If I cut a profile and have to remove the bit and replace it later to cut the exact same profile, this tool is a lifesaver, preventing even tiny changes in bit height from causing a mismatch between 2 edges. Remember when we did the video about tapered sliding dovetails and I had to transfer the dovetail router bit setting from the groove to the router table? This would have been perfect for that as well. Another clever way to use this is to check the diameter of a drill bit when you can't read the etching on the shank. You can use it to check the runout of a table saw or an electric motor shaft or a pulley. Again, we're just scratching the surface when it comes to the possible uses, both with and without the dial indicator attached. We're talking levels of precision that were once only available to metal workers, but now woodworkers are starting to take advantage of these great tools. I'll put links in the notes below so that you can check out the 1, 2, 3 blocks and related accessories for yourselves. In every Cool Tools video, I like to include one dirt cheap tool that's worth checking out. This is a strap-on LED headlamp. I'm not going to try it on for you because it looks ridiculous, and I know the image of it on my head with my hair going every which way is the one my editor at Popular Woodworking will use for my next book promo. I like to use it when I'm sharpening my tools. Light is very important to the sharpening process. It can help you to see the scratch pattern your abrasive is creating on a bevel, and the way that light reflects back to you is an indicator of how sharp an edge is. You can buy these all over, and you don't have to spend much on them if you're going to use them just in the workshop. I insist on the LED variety because the batteries last way longer than the old flashlight bulb style. I'll put a link to some inexpensive ones on Amazon in the notes below this video. Remember, when you use our links, even if you end up buying something else, we get a little kickback for sending you over there, and that's a great way to support all the free woodworking media we produce every month. Speaking of free woodworking media, be sure to hit that subscribe button below, and then head over to our website and check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal, which is always full of great woodworking tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker. You can read and subscribe for free at stumpynubs.com. It's a great place to sit back and have yourself a cold one, because you've earned it, my friend.